If you love trains and the Smoky Mountains, then keep watching because this video will show you how to get the best of both worlds. Welcome to Bear Facts, where we explore the Smoky Mountains one bear fact at a time. Those of you who have been following my channel probably have noticed that usually it's just me and my hubby on these trips to the Smoky Mountains, but this time I brought along my parents, and let's just say that planning activities with them is not easy. Hiking is completely out of the question. Clingman's Dome was a full-on disaster. Let's not bring that up. And we had already knocked out Dollywood, which took about 2 hours, and eaten at all their favorite restaurants already. So at this point, we're running out of ideas. And it was actually my husband who suggested the train ride. It'd been on our personal bucket list for a while, and somehow it's one of the few things my parents actually enjoy in Dollywood. So we threw the idea out there, fully expecting resistance, but we got I guess we can try it. Which, if you knew my parents, was as close to a standing ovation as we're gonna get. Now, both my parents are in their 70s, so they can be brutally honest with their opinions. And if you want to know what they thought about the excursion, you're going to have to wait till the end of the video, and I'll tell you their honest thoughts, which can be brutal, as I've already said. Now, if you do decide to go on this excursion, there's some things that probably you might want to learn. First of all, I would consider booking your excursion before you even head to Bryson City. In fact, in the fall, you might even want to consider doing it weeks or months ahead of time. They have an excellent website with all the information and pricing, dates, and information about the different offerings and packages right online. It is a very intuitive, easy to use website. Very, very good one. A heads up to these guys because this is one of the better ones. When you're booking, one of the biggest decisions you'll have to make is your seating. Everyone is assigned a specific seat, and because where you're sitting, the car that you're going to choose, and the extras you're going to add will shape your experience, knowing ahead of time what you want to do is really important. So there are several options, and they range from different prices. Some can have a lot more comfort and bouginess to it, and the other ones are just baseline. You're going to sit on a train and just enjoy the sights kind of thing, and much, much more budget friendly. And I'll tell you right now, one of these sounded better to us than the others, so I'll tell you which one we ended up with and why we decided on that when we get to that car. The first and most expensive and prestigious class that you can have is first class. This is your premium option, and it is fully climate controlled with large windows, table seating, and meal service is actually included. Hot meal service, as well as they offer you drinks on the train as well. This one will end up running you easily between $130 to $150 depending on the season. Then there's the premium open air gondola with a hot, warm meal that comes with your package. This one also has the drinks included, and this is kind of a little bit stepped down. The biggest issue with any of the open air gondolas is they have no climate control. None of the open gondolas do. They have open windows. You don't open and close the windows. However, many people do enjoy this service because they like the idea of having more access to the outside and looking out around them. This one is about $100 to $130 a person. The next one is the Coach Plus. Now, we actually almost tried to book this one, but had already been booked out by the time we looked. And I think the reason is because a lot of families prefer this one. They have a table between you and the booth in front of you. All right, the one we ended up going with was the Crown Class, and honestly, I would choose this one again. We do plan on doing the next other excursion, which is the Tukalichi one, in the summer. So if we do that one, I definitely feel that this is the class that we'll be going with. And I like this one because it's a solid middle option. It is fully climate controlled, meaning the windows can open and close, the fans and the ceiling can turn on and off, and they have AC and heat. So it is really nice all around. And the seatings, padding on the seating, I think are one of the better ones on all of the train. So it's more comfortable, and you definitely have a more first class feeling with the big stuffy chairs. The only thing about this one is that you are facing the people in front of you, which only is a downside if you don't know each other and you're sitting across a couple like my parents who would sit there with nothing to say for 4.5 hours. And you'd all be just like trying to not have eye contact because you're like, why aren't these people talking? Okay, this is uncomfortable. Yeah, that's the only downside. Another little downside on this class we noticed was because you're facing each other, you didn't have as much space for your feet to be. If you know each other, great, no problem. You just kick the other person aside. However, if you're strangers, well, now you're going to be shuffling a little bit. Other than that, we actually enjoyed the Crown class. And like I said, we'd end up doing this one again. All right, there's 2 more classes left afterwards. One is the open air gondola car, which is very similar to the open air premium. The biggest difference is that this one is a lower price because there is no meal service, or you don't get the unlimited drinks with this one. It is a wonderful car to stand and look outside and enjoy. I love this one, and I would even consider going on this particular one. The only thing I didn't like was the seating. I felt like it could have been padded a little bit better. Another thing that's important to note about this specific car is that it has a hydraulic lift for wheelchairs. So if you have someone who needs assistance with boarding and deboarding, this is the car that you'll most likely be assigned to. And this car is the only one that has an accessible restroom as well. Any guest can use this restroom. It's one of the biggest ones on the train. They have plenty of other restrooms on the train, but this is the only one that has one that's a little bit larger. And this is also good for people who are traveling with littles. So when you're booking your excursion, you might want to consider putting yourself closer to this restroom if it's one you think you're going to use more often. The very final class option to pick from is going to be the standard coach class. This is the most budget-friendly one, running between $65 to $95 a person. It is a fully enclosed car. The windows, I believe, can be opened and closed. It has heat, but it does not have AC, and you will not be getting any other services or conveniences in this particular class. Okay, so now that you've made a decision on which class you're going to go with, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to be asked a couple questions online if you're purchasing ahead of time. One of them is if you want to pre-purchase a boxed meal, especially if you aren't getting one already as part of your experience. Now, you are on this train for a long time, and even though there is a layover and they do have a cafe, this option might actually be a little bit less expensive, and it might actually be more budget friendly and convenient. So it's definitely something to look into. The box lunch is pretty simple and convenient. You're getting a sandwich, a wrap, chips, and a cookie and a drink, a bottle of water. On average, it runs about $12 to $15. This is something you'll pick up at the train depot before you're boarding. The other thing that you're going to be given the option to purchase beforehand is your parking ticket. Now, parking is not free. You will be charged about $10 a day for parking. And if you don't know Bryson City very well, this is a really good idea because then you can just arrive, park your car, and go to the station. The parking that they provide is a gravel lot. It is a little bit of a hike from the actual train station and then ultimately the train itself. So if you do have low mobility, definitely call ahead, ask about where you're going to be parking for handicap parking, and ask if there's a possibility that you can have some kind of assistance to get to the train itself. We did note that you can ask ahead and they might be able to help you out by using one of their little golf carts and get people to there. We saw at least one person utilizing that service. Definitely call ahead though and make sure that they're going to be able to accommodate you because it is a little bit of a hike from the parking lot. Now, once you are moving towards the buildings, you see a big, beautiful mural with these 2 trains. This is the logo for the railroad company. You'll also see a set of stairs and this wonderful little sign that seems to direct people right into their business. It is an awesome opportunity if you love popcorn because this company does provide a lot of variety with popcorn choices. Feel free to pass these guys. They're not part of the actual company. So that is an awesome marketing tool that they use, by the way. I applaud you guys, by the way. Anyway, you'll have to cross the street. Once you cross the street, you're going to see a building. That is the actual ticket booth, also where you're going to pick up your box lunch if you pre-ordered it. And you can also try to buy a box lunch while you're there. If they have any available, they certainly will sell them to you. And if you didn't purchase your tickets yet, this is where you're going to purchase them. Most of you who got your tickets online, all you need to do is have your phone with you or a screenshot of the tickets. You'll go up to the attendant by the big train sitting there on the tracks. That's how you know where you're to go. They will set up these numbers and the attendant will look at your ticket and tell you where you're going to go. So you'll just go to the assigned number and they'll put out a stool or a stepping stool for all of the guests to be able to get onto the train. So I know it looks really high, but they'll make it a little bit easier for you and assist you if you need that. Now, a lot of people are going to ask, well, what should I bring with me on the train? Here's what you can bring. You can bring your own drinks, your own snacks. You can bring a sweater. You can bring a blanket. I highly suggest a sweatshirt or something that you can just put over yourself because it does get chilly in some areas. You can't bring cooler though. That they are very clear on that. No coolers. Also, I would consider bringing a charging cord and cable because they actually did have outlets on the train. So if you're taking a dozen pictures and filming everything and you run out of juice on your phone, at least you can charge it on the way back. Especially though, if you have young ones who got a little bored and you're like, here, just occupy yourself. They can keep it charged and you can enjoy your trip a little bit longer. Now, if all you do is watch this video up to this point, make sure you pay attention to this very important point I'm going to make right now. Don't be late. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time to get to Bryson City, find parking, and get things situated. It is a long drive from Bryson City from Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg. You're looking at least another hour and a half. You'll end up taking 441 through the Smoky Mountain National Park. Most of you will be. And then on top of that, you still have to find parking and you have to pick up your box lunch. You have to find your car and you have to get on. That is a lot of thinking ahead for scheduling. And it can be a little tricky. So plan ahead and be early. Okay, they suggested online being there an hour early. Probably don't need that much time. However, if you are one of those people that have a hard time with time management, don't get me wrong, we all have all been there. But if you are one of those people, make sure you go with someone who isn't, okay? Because this train will leave. They are only checking your ticket to make sure you're paid for. That's the only time they check your ticket. They want to make sure you paid for your ticket and that's it. They're not checking to see if you're on the train. So if you're late, the only train you'll see is the one pulling away. Give yourself plenty of time. Now, once you are on board, things get pretty relaxed and easygoing. You can move between cars on your side of the train. You can check out the cafe if you didn't bring food, or you can head to one of the open air sections on your side of the train. There are plenty of restrooms on the train, one per car, and as we said, the handicap one is at the other end of the train. If you are looking for something to snack on, head on down to the cafe. That's in the middle cart, right in the middle of the entire train. Anyone on the train is welcome to go there and walk to this section of the train. Here you can purchase different food items like ice cream and candy, and they even have some food items like, I believe I saw corn dogs, and they also had hot dogs and pretzels and popcorn. Now, I'm going to give you my parents' verdict on that pretzel at the end of this video, so if you want to hear their brutal, honest opinion about the food there, I will give it to you then. Now, as you're sitting there and you're watching the scenery going by, you're going to start thinking, well, why aren't they talking about this? Well, what's going on? What am I seeing? And this was the biggest thing that we did not appreciate, was the lack of any kind of audio tutorial. So, little heads up, people who own the company, the railroad company, maybe think about getting one of those audio tour things. People, I think, would love it because here you don't have to listen to someone droning on above you. You have it in your ear. You can listen to it when you want. Maybe you can have them rent them. I don't know. It would be really cool for the guests on the train to have this kind of experience. Just as a little thought. Anyway, Because I didn't have this kind of experience, I ended up having to learn about all this stuff afterwards. So when I started doing my research for this video, I'm like, okay, what did I see? What were these highlights here? What am I looking at in my footage? And this is what I'm going to do for you right now. I'm going to tell you the things that I wish I had known before getting on the train. So maybe this will help elevate your personal experience. So here we go. I'm going to give you the highlights of things that we saw along the way and what I was able to find out. The first thing I wanted to learn about was the actual rail line itself. And what I found was that this actually used to be called the Murphy Branch, and it was built in the 1880s to move primarily timber and large materials and supplies. By the 1980s, the railroad was basically on the brink of closure. And there were three pretty important factors that led to the ultimate demise of the railroad company. And one was that over time, as cars and highways became more common in the early mid-1900s, passenger services declined. And also, the railroad had to shift more heavily to freight, mainly hauling timber and raw materials. This is where number 2 came in, the development of the Smoky Mountain National Park, which basically eliminated or declined timber production in the entire region. And the third and final nail in that coffin was the creation of the Fontana Dam. I know, huh? What? That doesn't make any sense. Well, I'll explain this. When they created the dam, they actually had to flood out almost the entire original straight line track that used to run through the area. This not only took out several communities in the area, it also changed the railroad track profile, and it made it much longer and windier. Great for tourists, not so good for companies who need efficiency. So that left the railroad on the brink of closure. But as the tracks were about to be torn out of the ground, a group of investors stepped in to preserve it. So in 1988, Malcolm and Joanne McNeil secured a lease from the state of North Carolina, and almost overnight, the line transitioned from a failing freight route to a scenic passenger excursion you are on today. Along the trip, there are a few standout moments, and one is the crossing of the Fontana Trestles, which carries you out over the Fontana Lake and into the gorge itself. Now, that bridge is over 80 years old and was built when the railroad had to be rerouted after the valley was flooded. During this time, the train conductor will remind passengers to keep their arms inside the car. And these trestles are from a different era. They're very narrow, so if you want to keep your camera and your arm attached, keep them inside the car when you're going through the trestles. Another unexpected moment comes as you're passing by the Fontana Lake itself. As you're moving along the lake, you start noticing houses sitting right out in the middle of the water. Not one or two, but dozens of them. Almost a small community of them. At first, they're just looking like they're floating out in the middle of nowhere, and they actually are floating out in the middle of nowhere. These houses are mostly rentals, and they're only accessible via a boat. And many people love to rent them. They're often powered by solar and with very little cell phone services. It's a completely different way of living, and as you can tell from our footage, most of these houses are very low in the water because the water levels hadn't been released yet by the dam. Later in the summer and in the fall, the houses are a lot higher off of the ground, so you'll see a lot more activity on the water as well. As you're booking your excursion, you'll notice that it highlights this as the Nantahala Gorge excursion. So the gorge is something you actually do go through. I have to say that in the early spring, I wasn't as thrilled with this part of it. I didn't feel like it was like this grand experience. However, I think that in the fall, this area would have been stunning because you would see a lot more foliage. During the time we went, it was early spring. Beautiful wildflowers, some blossoming trees. I mean, it was nice and all, but I don't feel that we got the gorge experience as well as you will in the fall. Just something to think about. As you're moving along, another hidden detail that most people won't even notice, my mom did. And it was only because of the beehive. She's like, oh my gosh, there's a beehive right there. There's a giant beehive. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I looked out there and there's this building there with a tractor. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I filmed it and we moved on. But what I didn't know until I started doing my research was that this actually is on Google Maps and it's labeled the historic Almond train station. That's a little misleading because it's not the actual station anymore. It's just the site where it used to be. As you have already learned, the Fontana Dam actually eliminated certain towns, and Almond was basically one of the ones that got flooded out. And this here was where the original town and the depot used to be. So the building itself, not really the original one. Another thing you might notice along the Nantahala route is you'll also pass an active industrial site that really stands out from all this natural, beautiful scenery. From what I can tell online, it looked like it's an operation that's owned by the Vulcan Materials Company. It's one of the largest production companies of construction materials in the country. And as you can see from the footage, most of those materials are now transported by truck. And this site absolutely reflects the original purpose of the rail line, which was built in the 1800s, that used to support industries like this one. So now they don't use the rails, but at least you get to see a little bit of history that way. Eventually, the train reaches the Nantahala Outdoor Center, but before you stop, you'll notice the train actually keeps going. Yeah, that's because the engine has to be repositioned. Since the train can't literally turn around, they end up detaching the engine and moving it to the front of the track and reconnecting it to what used to be the caboose, the opposite end, so they can lead the train back. So if you're near one of the open air cars, it's definitely worth watching. Once the train pulls back into the Nantahala Outdoor Center, you'll have about an hour to get off and explore. It's a really lively spot, and the day we were there was very, very busy, especially for those people who love to whitewater raft. I know you might have seen somewhere in the Smoky Mountains there's whitewater rafting, and you might have thought, like we've done many times, where would you do that? Well, this is where they do it. If you ever do want to do a whitewater rafting excursion, this is one of the places you're most likely to be directed to. There are actually a couple places to eat, including the Big Wiser Riverside Pub and the River's End Restaurant, along with a general store if you want to grab snacks. You can walk across the pedestrian bridge, check out the river, and there's even a small waterfall nearby to get lots and lots of pictures with. It's not a huge area, but it can get very busy, and it's a nice place to stretch your legs. But you only have an hour, so most folks won't even have time to eat. I would just take a look and note the place and then drive back someday. Maybe you want to try the whitewater rafting and this is something you can do on your own. There's a road right there. Anyway, like I said, make sure you pay attention to what time they tell you to be back on that train because these people are serious about their times. If you were running late, they're going to leave without you and you get to try to get back home some other way, so watch your time. On the way back, you can just kind of take it easy, talk with whoever you're with, just enjoy the scenery and relax on the way back to Bryson City. When you actually get to the city, if you have a little energy left, you might want to check out the Smoky Mountain Train Museum, Miniature Train Museum, which is located right as you're walking to the train station itself. It features an impressive collection of model trains and layouts. And while I wasn't actually sure if the admission was included in my train ticket, they had the doors wide open when people were getting off the train. And I don't know, I kind of walked in and walked around. I thought it was really cool. So I'm going to guess they encourage guests of the train to be able to go in afterwards, which was a nice little bonus. All right, so here's the verdict. You're going to hear the brutal, honest truth from my mom. Her first thing is that she was very uncertain on her feet. She didn't like the idea that she couldn't get up and move around because she felt like she would fall. Now, this can be a serious concern for anyone who is not stable on their feet, so she did feel like she was stuck to her seat the entire time. She also wasn't exactly thrilled with what we were able to see. I think if we had taken the Tuckaleechee version of the train ride, she might have seen a little bit more, but they didn't give her any kind of audio or things to explain what she was looking at, so she felt like she was just looking at a bunch of hills and trees. That was her thought. Now, my dad did get up and move around a little bit more, and he's kind of the train guy. He does enjoy trains and things like that a little bit more, so he explored the train more. Both of them did agree, though, that they would have liked the layover to be a little bit longer. An hour wasn't enough time for them to get to the town and to walk around and see much, so they didn't really get to do much other than use the restrooms there. My mom didn't want to use the restrooms on the train because it made her nervous to get up and moving around when the train's actively moving. So once again, that was another thing that they both had to say. Okay, the only real negative thing both of them had was the pretzel. Okay, the pretzel, I admit, I tried it. Yeah, they didn't give you enough cheese to get it to go down right. And my dad's like, I paid this much money for this pretzel and I'm gonna eat it. I don't care if I choke it down. Okay, so he did eat it. It was a little rough going down, I'll admit that. So if you are not one for really dry pretzels, maybe skip that and get something else. Neither one of them had a complaint about the hot dog though. All right, so now let's hear me and my husband's perspective. Both me and my husband had no problem getting up and moving around. We were confident on our feet. Yeah, it swayed a little bit here and there, and we did use the restroom when we were on there. Just letting you know, it can be a little bit of a bidet kind of experience if you hit a bump at the wrong time, but they do have running water and flushing toilets, so that was great. We thought that this was a really nice alternative for many people who want to experience the Smoky Mountains in a different way than the highway. And neither one of us had to drive. It was a nice, relaxing trip, and it had actually been on our bucket list. Now, I personally am very excited about going on the Tuckaleechee line. That is the one I want to see next, and we're going to be doing that in the summer. So this first experience, I think, would have been better in the fall. I would have preferred it in the fall, but this is when we did it, and I still enjoyed it. I thought it was fascinating seeing the lake as low as it was, and getting a chance to do this when it was cooler and not too hot. Liked that very much. And my husband was thrilled that they had fountain soda. Okay, he loves his soda, and the fact that they had fountain sodas in that bottle, he loved it. That was his favorite thing. So if you have someone you're going with that likes fountain sodas, okay, you're all set. Okay, I hope this video helps you plan your visit to the Smoky Mountains. You're getting an honest review from a bunch of 70-year-old people and a little bit younger people and our personal experiences, but facts and things change, so please keep us in the loop if you've learned anything new and want to share your experiences in the comments. Thanks again for visiting us at Bear Facts of the Smoky Mountains. Please click that like button and subscribe to our channel.